Journey led to the Capitol to fight on behalf of the people for the past 12 years. Lisa brought the heartbeat bill to the General Assembly and continues to fight on every front. Wave, Lisa. There's Lisa. She'll go to the podium here in a minute. Joid was a stay-at-home mom in Jefferson City who was called by God to go to the Capitol in 2021. Although she knew nothing when she walked in that first day, she has spent the last 3 years immersed in legislation, research, campaigns, and issues. She's built relationships with legislators, executives, and grassroots leaders across the state. As her blog, Facebook group, podcast, and now a new ministry have grown into an equipping resource for Missouri. During the 2023 legislative session, she spent nearly every day of session at the Capitol, and since then she's been reading through every bill passed, dissecting data, and compiling information to share to answer the questions, what are they doing? She's coming to share her answer. And so, Jody, give a wave, and ladies, I hear you're going to share the podium. Come on up. Thank you for coming this evening.
Well, thank you so much. Oh, there we go.
Here we go. Thank you so much for having us. We really, really appreciate it. We should have said that in fact, it was Lisa who printed all those bills off. She read them first, then she calls me and she says, hey, look what they've done. I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Read that to me again. So Lisa and I both have spent, I'd hesitate to tell you how many hours, days, weeks, months, it feels like forever, dissecting and really trying to figure out what is it that they really are doing. Because if you are tuned into Jefferson City at all, you'll hear, especially from our Senate leadership, that the conservatives are causing so much problems, they can't get anything done. And we'd like to tell you that that's a lie. They're doing plenty. And so we came here to talk to you about it this evening. We are prepared with a lot of information, but we did not coordinate or plan exactly who was going to say what this evening. So we're just winging it, which we're pretty good just at talking about it. We could probably talk for days, so I don't think we'll be in any trouble, but I don't know how you want me to start off here, or we're going to try to tell you the truth as we know it about what actually happens in the Capitol in Jefferson City. Our introduction, we get asked a lot, well, what are you exactly? What position do you have, or what do you really do? And the truth is, we're moms who love the Lord and who are called according to his purpose. And we just really pray and try our best to do the thing that he's calling us to do when he asks us to do it. So nobody's paying us, although I did start a faith-based nonprofit over the summer, so your donations are tax deductible if you'd like to support the effort. But, we don't work for anybody. We don't have a title. We're just here really trying to do the best we can to speak the truth and to do what the Lord leads us to do. So one of the questions that we get asked a lot is, gosh, we have a Republican governor, we have a Republican-led Senate, we have a Republican-led House, we have this Republican supermajority. Why in the world aren't we seeing more things like Florida's doing?
They're rhinos.
So we want to talk about that a little bit and just share exactly what is happening. So we do have a supermajority. The Republicans rule definitely in the House and in the Senate. We're going to talk about the stats and our legislative stats on both sides of the building, how the rules in the House are top down. The rules in the House really are affecting everything. And without a change in the rules, we're going to have a huge problem. We're going to talk about the votes and the omnibus bills, and we're going to talk about the processes in the Senate as well. So, have at it there, Lisa.
So with this supermajority that we have, just talking about it further, we have You know, the governor is a Republican. They're in the House, we have 111 Republicans versus 52 Democrats in the House. In the Missouri Senate, we have 24 Republicans and 10 Democrats. So we have a majority makeup of Republicans. The problem is not that, and the problem is not that the conservatives have been such obstacles. Both of those things are not the problem. Again, as Jody has noted, Missouri has more Republicans than Florida. We have more here. So there's no excuse that we cannot look better than Florida. We should. Now we'll go into the reasons why we're not seeing that. With those House stats, this is one example right here, that Republican reps, we had 111 Republican representatives, and less than 20 of those reps were willing to stand on a freedom vaccination amendment.
So in one of our presentations, I didn't make this slide really clear, so I'll clarify. There was a vaccine amendment that Bill Hardwick filed, and this vaccine amendment would have protected our school children from being required to take a COVID vaccine. So that's the amendment that we're talking about. He made a proposal that would protect our children so that they would not have to ever take a COVID vaccine. Not only COVID, but he specified no mRNA vaccine, period, would ever be required of our school children. So of 111 Republican representatives, only 20 of those, it was actually less than 20, worked with him to pass that amendment. It did not pass, so that didn't happen. But it just goes to show you that you expect that we'd have 111 representatives who would be cheering him on to protect our children. And that is absolutely not what happened.
So now I'll talk to you a little bit about the House rules. So I think now there's a basic understanding because of what happened with Mike Johnson on how important a speaker is. Now myself, I actually went back to the 1868 rules. In 1868, our Missouri House rules, we had what's called rules and etiquette for the speaker. It's the same thing that we have now, but what's happened is they've chipped away at that. So I'll just give you a little overview on what that looks like. In 1868, the speaker had two functions. It was to keep rules and decorum of the chamber, which was like they couldn't do the spittoons. They actually said that. So they had problems with spittoons and causing kind of a ruckus. And so it was to keep some order and stability. However, like the main function of the speaker was if we had two members that would stand at the same time, the speaker could then decide which one stood first so that they could call on them in that order. But any two members that objected to that and said that the other member stood first, it was overturned. Now I'm going to fast forward and tell you how much the control the speaker has now. It's almost total control and authority. So if any member stands now, the speaker doesn't have to recognize them. The speaker determines every bill basically that's going to make it to the floor, in with the floor leader, okay, they decide together. He decides every committee makeup. The speaker was so unimportant in 1868 that our rules actually said if there should be one. Well, what do you mean, Lisa? There wasn't one? It meant it wasn't that important. And what you see right now is if you come to Jeff City and watch what happens on the dais, they change speakers all the time, on the daily, on presiding over. We don't need that, but what's happened is they've handed all authority over to one person. And so now they have no control left. So part of this thing that we're going to explain to you is if your House reps, the very thing that you should be telling anybody that wants to run as a House rep is, will you change the rules to get your authority back? Basic. If they will say no or come with some objection, that's not who you want as your House rep. If they will not stand to say, I will take my authority back in the House, then you don't need them.
And they need to understand, it's the rules that dictate how the process unfolds. It's the rules that actually dictate how those bills move through the process, how many committees there are, how many people are on the committees, who's on the committees. It's the rules that dictate the process. So most often, many times, the people who are volunteering feel called to run, and they run with good intentions. They don't even understand going in what the rules do, or that the rules are so important. So those are definitely conversations that you need to be having with anyone running for a House seat. Is, do you understand the importance of the rules? Do you know where the rules are at? Because you can print them off. All of you can print them off right now off the House website. They're made available to the public. Have you read them? Would you be willing to read them? Would you be willing to talk to somebody about them to understand how they affect legislation and what you can do about it? So definitely those are conversations as you're getting to know your candidates. You need to specifically have a conversation about the rules and make sure that they do understand. And if they need help understanding them or how that functions, they can definitely reach out to Lisa or me, and we're happy to help. And she just went through all that. So that is a picture up on top of Dean Plocker. He is the House Speaker right now. And the gentleman underneath him is John Patterson. Now, John will be the next speaker. This is an interesting thing that happens, is that they've already elected their next speaker, even though there are a lot of House representatives that aren't even elected yet. So this past fall, I think in August or September, the House caucused and they chose Patterson to be their speaker, but that election won't even happen for real until January of 2025. So what they're setting up is they're tapping the next guy to be speaker, and so now all of the lobbyists, all the lobby corps has a year and a half to build relationship with the new speaker and pad the new speaker's war chest, so to speak, to prepare him for his term in office.
And really what that's to do is it's to keep all the ants in line. So if you understand what's really truly happened, that vote, that official vote cannot take place until everyone has been elected. But what happens is they don't want the ants to get out of line. And so because they don't want that, they always want this essence of control. So what they do is a facade vote saying we're all going to take this vote for future when those people haven't even been elected yet. Does that make sense? And it's just to keep them all under control. It's all a control game. When in reality, we're electing one of 163 that should have authority over your vote, no matter what it looks like, Republican or Democrat. Right now, we have one person with all the authority.
So in essence, what this top-down power structure does, and it happens through the rules, but it sets up this system that it's very easy to pay to play. Because you just need to pay one or two people. They don't need to pay 163 reps. They need to pay the speaker and the majority floor leader. They do that through an organization called the HRCC, which stands for the House Republican Campaign Committee. Now that's actually a private organization, and it's run by a guy named John Ratliff, who happens to be the owner of a campaign consulting firm. Isn't that interesting? So they end up, the HRCC is supposedly collecting money, they're raising money to support Republican candidates, but this just ends up being really a system where they're legally, so to speak, laundering money through the HRCC. They're collecting money from candidates, from politicians, putting it into the HRCC pot. The HRCC then supports their choice of Republican candidates. But it's just part of the game that they play. So your House candidates, your representatives, the people who are running for House reps, they need to understand before they get involved the role that the HRCC plays and how this all actually works. So then because of this, you have your rank and file representatives. They call them rank and file. It's all known. So if you're up there, they'll even discuss themselves as I'm just a rank and file rep. But those rank and file reps have no power. And what they're doing is removing power from the people when they remove power from those rank and file reps. So this is just a big part of the reason that it becomes a corrupt mess. Even the good-hearted ones, and we talked to a gentleman today who's running in the Donovan area, and I can't remember his name. Keith Elliott. Good-hearted, right? Like, if I were down there, I'd probably vote for him. He's a good-hearted guy, but if he doesn't come into this situation equipped and with knowledge and understanding, then you get sucked into the system before you even understand what's happening, and you end up having to play the game. So we need to do a lot of work in helping and supporting our candidates before they get elected. Once the election actually takes place, really even before the election, the HRCC will make rounds to the candidates prior to the election and hand them a check. And the candidate doesn't understand when they take that money, what they're actually taking and who they're, developing an association with. They just don't understand, they don't know. So it's really important, we think, to start having these conversations and telling the truth and sharing this information with the people who are actually running. We just got ahead of ourselves here. Do you want to talk about that more, or are you done with it? Okay, so we're going to move. That's the House. So the main problem in the House really is the rules, and that our candidates understand what they're getting into, and that we have candidates who are willing to stand up and fight for rule changes. But you want to introduce the Senate?
So then the Senate, we have 24 Republican senators, 7 conservative Republicans on a good day. I can't emphasize that enough. On a good day.
There aren't very many good days, just so you know.
We have 14 of what we call Gaga, Rhino, Chino. Chino's a new one that's Christian in name only. So we decided that's another one because they only find their Christianity during election season. So there's 14 of those. And the importance of the Senate is that it has the power of the filibuster. So if anybody here doesn't understand what that is, we can stand on any given day and keep talking. We could read a bill, we can debate one another, and without a majority, they cannot make us sit down. And they don't like to use that. That procedure is called a previous question, asking for a previous question. And they rarely ever use it. And so we have the power of the filibuster, which is a very, very good thing for us as conservatives, okay? So that means any bad legislation that comes up, any senator, anyone, you only need one, can stand and question and read the bill. Now, why is that important? Because I can tell you, your senators did not read the bills last session. I'm going to say that again. Your senators, not in DC, here in Missouri, did not read the bills last session. I find this disgusting. I find it disgusting that having the tool like this in your toolbox and not using it and saying that you're abiding by the Constitution. How can you be abiding by a Constitution if you're not even reading the bills that you're voting on?
It really is no different than DC.
Gaga.
Go along to get along. So we have the Republicans in name only. Y'all are familiar with that one. Gagas are go along to get along. We have many, many, many of those. In fact, I would say the leadership is, if not Rhino, definitely Gaga. And then, they really love to claim their Christianity at certain times and then not really walk it out. So the Senate leadership, the way that it functions, the way that the process functions in the Senate, which really controls a lot of what happens in the building as a whole. The Senate drives a lot of the
It drives the agenda and the
the
policy.
agenda. They really, yeah, it's the Senate that drives the agenda and the priorities. So, but what they do is they hold on to things all session long. You won't see them pass anything. January, they'll start in the 1st of January, February, March, April, nothing passes. From May the 1st to May the 15th, it's like, it's not organized chaos, it's just pure chaos. But they do it on purpose because they need to hold their leverage as long as they can, till the end.
And by holding the leverage, what she means is there's usually 2 good bills that all of it's like feeding us the red meat, right? Like we're the animals and they feed us the red meat. And they always decide what that's going to be. If it's a gold and silver bill, if it's protecting against these transgender surgeries, if it's my heartbeat bill, right, to protect the kids. You name, if it's SEPA for guns.
They need the trophy to bring home to you to keep you happy.
They only want to talk to you about those 2 bills. And they want to say, I'm the one that carried that, even though that may have been the first year they even ever carried it. Because they decided behind closed doors, I need to make her look good. And so I'm going to make sure I'm going to take it from the people that have been carrying it for years and put it in her hands so that she looks good and we can brag about her. In the meantime, everything that she's doing that we're never going to talk about and nobody's ever going to know because nobody looks, are all these other 40 horrible omnibus Democrat bills that this Republican sponsored and passed. And that's what happens every single session. I can guarantee you we can talk to you again this time next year, and that's what's going to happen. So it's not a surprise. The lobbyists have it set up like this. The leadership has it set it up like this. And it's just this perpetual feeding frenzy. And then you'll have a Holly Raider that comes to you and says, well, I protected men and women's sports. That was me, I protected them. Cinder Girl over here did that. She's not telling you that she's doing all the data, privacy, that she's had clean needle bills. Has she ever told you about clean needle bills that she's sponsored year after year to give junkies clean needles? That's Holly Raider. They don't tell you about the things that they did. So,
yeah, so we end up with omnibus bills with all of this crap piled in it. And what's happening now is that they're all voting together. The Democrats and the Republicans are all voting yes. So if I show you the votes, and I'm actually in the middle of preparing, it's actually going to end up being a book. I have almost 100 pages written so far with every section of legislation that they actually passed so that you actually know what they did, and then the votes to match those sections of statute. They cram so many statutes in one bill, statutes that the Democrats love. Now, like Lisa said, they're not going to talk to you about those, but they put them in there. So the Democrats vote yes, the Republicans vote yes, and when you see the vote sheet, how do you know? It's a big omnibus bill. Everybody voted yes. How do you hold anybody accountable when you have vote records like that? They're all voting the same way. It's a huge, huge problem. This year, they passed 60 bills total, but 20 of those were budget bills. So of the 40 non-budget bills, and we could talk all for a year about the budget. That's a problem of its own. But the 40 non-budget bills, 39 of the 40 of those passed in the last 2 weeks. And most of those 40 were multi-subject, unconstitutional bills. So you need to understand, if you don't already, that our state constitution says that the bills should be one-subject bills. Most of these 40 bills they passed should never have been voted on in the first place.
and those in the last 2 weeks, so something else that you're gonna see that's, again, it's the same thing over and over again, is that we really pressed last session to get those protections for the transgender before those last 2 weeks. And so anybody that was on social media seeing us pressure Cindy O'Laughlin, the floor leader, we want it now, we want it now. And she kept saying, just wait till the end of session, just wait till the end of session. That is, ants, get in line, ants. Because They need that to hold it hostage with the conservatives at the end. That's what's going on. They need those bills to be at the very end so then they can say, well, we're not going to do transgender protection then. Nope. Mutilating the kids? Nope. You want to protect those kids, you're going to have to do all these other 40 bills. You don't like them? You haven't had time to read them? Don't care. We're at the end here, and you have to vote for these bills, and then we'll pass the protections. That's why, again, we should be pressing them to be passing things sooner that it's good legislation, and they don't want to do that because they want to hold it hostage.
So I'm trying to reload my slides. I think I lost connection with the internet because the next slide is actually the votes. And I lost some of my photos in these slides, so here it is.
Did you connect? Or
I think I got it.
Delmonico's is not very good.
Okay, so you won't be able to see this well enough to see which bill is which, but the bills are up at the top. On the left sidebar there, the blue and the red, those lines are your senators. The blue senators are Democrats, and the red lines are Republicans. Now, I took their names out because, frankly, this is quite offensive to them. And we upset some of the guys we actually like because they're like, Jody, you can't show people this. You're gonna mess things up, meaning their campaigns, okay? So I said, okay, I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. I'm just trying to tell the people the truth. And until we tell the truth, I don't know how we fix it, okay? So regardless of the bill, what you can see by this chart is that aren't the blue and the red people voting the same most of the time? Most of the time, they're voting the same. I'll show you SB 49, which was the transgender bill. This one. These two are what a partisan vote looks like. This one was the girls and women, the women's sports bill, and this one was the transgender surgery bill. So if they were voting along party lines, and that's not to say they should always vote strict party lines, but just so that you know, this is what the pattern would look like if they were voting party line. This is why we have a problem. This is why what you're seeing happen doesn't look like Florida.
This is 80% of the time, they're voting together. And this is why the Democrats were celebrating on the Capitol steps at the end of the session.
They literally,
celebrating.
I wish I could find the picture. It's somewhere out there in internet land. There's literally a picture of the Democrats on the front steps of the Capitol drinking and dancing after the last day of session.
Some of them said we couldn't do it better ourselves. We couldn't do it better ourselves. And this is what the Republicans are doing to us.
Yeah, the rhinos, the ones they're throwing under the bus, I'm more angry at them than the Democrats.
Oh, you
Exactly.
should be.
Yeah,
At
you
least
should
the Democrats act like Democrats.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yes.
know what to expect from somebody who says they support those things. But when you run on a Republican ticket that's full of scripture, if you've read the Republican platform, it's full of scripture references. And then, I mean, it's like you get whiplash. I mean, what is happening here? Well, that's what is happening. It's Pelosi-style bills. The Democrats are happy. And I literally was in Senate leadership's office over the interim. Crazy story, but I ended up there. And she said, Jody, you don't know how hard it is to keep everybody happy here. That's exactly what she said.
Okay.
You don't know how hard it is to keep everybody happy. And we can't accomplish anything if everybody's not happy. And then she was frustrated with me. And she said, you know, if people want to get involved, they just need to stay home and get on their school boards. She's a Republican.
No, she's a
Cynthia
Robin.
Law.
No,
She
they're all commies.
is part of your Senate leadership.
Part of the problem. Not
She
the
is
solution.
part of the problem.
So is Parsons.
So, yeah. So our leadership is a huge problem.
You're right on.
Part of a lot of what they passed feeds into
Can't stand it.
globalism, right? So ultimately what we want is freedom for the people. And a lot of people feel like, well, we see things happening and we don't understand why. Well, we've showed you why, and now we're going to talk about what. What is it they actually did? And a good friend of ours, Amy Fox, some of you may know her, she has studied the World Economic Forum and global sustainable development for years and years. And she said something to me this session, and it just like, whoo, it's like a light bulb went off in my mind. She said, Jody, this is what you need to remember. If you remember nothing else about sustainable development, this is what the goal is. It is to centralize and standardize all systems for the purpose of inventory, monitoring, and ultimately controlling. But they can't control until they know what they have, which is inventorying, so we have to keep track of it. We have to monitor it so we know what's happening with it, and then we can control it. All ALL, natural resources, and human activity. So when you see little pieces and parts of legislation come through that feed into this inventory or monitoring, we're not quite yet to the complete controlling part, but we are definitely inventorying and monitoring. So those are the things you need to keep in mind as we talk about statutes that have already passed.
Okay.
There you go.
So, it's going through all these bills this session. There were 3 conservative bills, 3 of them. They're going to talk to you about 2 of them, and the third person will talk to you about the third one. Basics are men and women's sports, protecting that, protecting against the mutilation of our children with the transgender. And the third is actually, it was another one about the intent, criminal intent. If you didn't mean to kill somebody, but you did, that they can't just say, well, you didn't intend, you intend to harm them, but not kill them, and use that for an excuse, okay? So those are your 3 conservative bills.
So that just means if you kill somebody, even if you killed the wrong person, you still get charged for murder.
Yeah, you're not gonna get off the hook just because you maybe intended to hurt them, but you didn't intend to kill them. Now, this bill, SB 70, was the one that I called Jody about when I started reading the bills, because this is the most communist bill I think I've ever seen. It was SB 70. It's Senator Travis Fitzwater, Republican, Christian, nice guy. He would say, what was this bill about? Well, this bill was about an interstate medical compact allowing doctors to participate across state lines and helping our military. Those are lobbyist talking points. He is the sponsor of the bill, so he should have read his bill to see what was in it. But instead, I go all over and I tell people what was actually in the bill on page 37, whatever. But this was an interstate medical compact that had,
I think you're getting too close to me.
12 subjects, 12 different subjects. So just on the subjects alone, this is unconstitutional. You can see the whole list of subjects within this one bill.
It started out just as the counselor's compact, but it ended up with 3 different compacts plus 9 other topics.
And here is Senator Rusty Black. He also had part of that in here. It was in the medical compacts, it was social and professional counselors, which is important because if you see what they're doing with the kids now, and they're doing the transgender surgeries on them and getting them on hormones, that's important for them to have these compacts. These interstate compacts pertain to all the licensing of the healthcare professionals, counselors, social workers, and the Interstate Commission rules have the full force of law. That is in this legislation. So if you understand only the basics of a constitution and the separation of the powers, separation of powers is so that an executive branch, which by the way, the executive branch departments makes rules. It's never meant to have the full force of law. That's for the legislative branch to create law. What they did in this compact is they allowed a commission outside of DC. Think of your CDCs, your NIHs, all that.
Missouri will only have one representative on this commission, and it'll be a bureaucrat. It won't be an elected official. One member from each member state is on the commission. So if there are 25 states involved, you've got 25-member commission, but Missouri only has one vote. And we've just ceded our power over to that commission and said whatever they do on that commission will be enforced as state statute.
This is our doctors. So if you think of our freedom-loving doctors that we had here, they would not be able to practice under this for a whole list of reasons. But we talked to some of those freedom-loving doctors to say, would these things have been a problem for you? They said, definitely, we wouldn't be able to practice. So right now, it is the camel's nose in the tent, so they can decide to participate in this interstate compact, or they can decide just to be part of Missouri and go through Missouri's rules. But as we know, once they start this in motion, it's just, they keep nudging until they get everything under its umbrella. So this interstate compact has the full force of law. We're paying all kinds of money into this compact. We have to do exactly what the compact says, or they pull the license. And if we decide we want to get out of this compact, we are heavily penalized. Now, anything that the compact comes up with as a rule that now becomes a law, it has the full force of law, including our courts here, including our attorney general, is to uphold it. This thing that we just created, now, it is this entity against the people. And all of it is on their side versus us. This is the most communist thing I've ever seen. And I cannot believe that basically we didn't really have any pushback from Republicans.
Because they didn't read it.
So it passed?
It passed.
Oh, it passed.
3 or 4 different times. They have the doctors, the professionals who are being licensed have to participate fully in whatever data systems this commission comes up with. They have to fully comply with the rules of the commission, of course. And the commission can create emergency rules with 0 notice. And coming through a pandemic, as we have, you know how important those emergency rules can be.
Would the emergency be something like climate emergency? Or
I think probably it could be anything they wanted. I would expect under this administration and how things function, they could, I mean, who's to say,
We really can't buck it because they put it in there. They wrote it in such a way that it was so open-ended and everything is against us that even if we tried to push back, it's going to be very difficult.
I was talking to a representative after the fact during interim. I called him, he's an attorney, and I said, hey, did you understand what you were voting on? And he said, well, we did that because our counselors, our doctors, especially military spouses, military families move state to state all over. We don't want for those professionals to have to go through all the red tape of, the tests and whatever to be licensed in the new state that they move into. And also, we want, what if you have a doctor that you know of in California or Florida or any other state, and now that we have the technology with telehealth, you could see a doctor in Florida maybe that, would be better fit for you than what we have here. So that's why we did it. We did it so that people would have more freedom to see more, have a variety of professionals, and our professionals would have an easier time moving around if the need arose. And I agree, those are good things. We're not fussing about that. But the problem is we already had the ability to have reciprocity between states. We did not need to opt ourselves into this. And when he read it, he said, Jody, this is horrible.
Yeah.
What did we do? And I said, yeah, that's what I'm asking you. What did you do?
And there's a lot of them. This is very, very frustrating on our part because there's a lot of them saying that to us. What did we do? It's like, are you kidding? Like you're
the one
asking
with the
us
vote.
that?
Yeah.
What's the test to the constitutional test to this through the courts?
Well, you have to have, let me tell you, because I got an attorney, Andy Schlafly, who's Phyllis Schlafly's son. He was going to take this on for me. The problem is that, because I wanted to sue and I'm known to sue, okay? The problem is you have to have the harm first.
Yep.
We have to wait for the harm. You have to have the injury first. So until we have an actual injury of some sort, and my best guess is we're going to have a lot of injuries over a lot of different things all at once. They're going to tidal wave us because it's not just going to be with the doctors and it's not just going to be with the nurses. It's going to be with the social workers. It's going to be everywhere all at once, like, you know, a dumpster fire. And then where do we go? And what few attorneys that we do have, and they are few and far between, will be willing to take up this versus something else.
So you mean the unconstitutionality of the statute will not be its own standing?
Nope. No, and let me give you another example. So you talk about unconstitutional. In St. Louis County, you know, where I'm from, when we had the churches that shut down, I brought a lawsuit, okay? And that lawsuit was considered mute because the county executive pulled the closing of the church doors before the judge could rule on it. So they waited till the last second, and then the judge said, I'm not telling you that you don't have standing right now because he pulled it, but I'm not telling you that it's not valid, so you could bring it again. But it's like a whack-a-mole. And by the way, like there was $10,000 in that lawsuit that I didn't get the $10,000 back. And so every time I'd have to pour back into an attorney another $10,000 trying to play this whack-a-mole game. And that's just completely unconstitutional, right? To your point, it's totally unconstitutional, but.
My next question is, can they go back and amend the law that they?
Yes. They can,
We
but
may
there's
suffer some
penalties.
penalties. We may suffer some penalties, but they could.
A lot, because they made that very clear that we ever decide to get out of the compact, that we are heavily penalized and on the hook, like they're taking loans in the name of this commission. There's fees, they don't even say what they are in the names of the, like all of this infrastructure that they're building through this commission, we're on the hook for. And they made that abundantly clear, like they spelled it out.
Who is the they? They are.
Whoever wrote the legislation, which would be much higher level than our state department.
The first thing I think of when you guys talk about this is the push for our federal government to relinquish our sovereignty to the WHO. That's the first thing I think about.
Mm-hmm.
You're right on, because everybody was focused on that treaty, and I was over here screaming going, while you guys are all screaming about this treaty, we're doing it in our state, the right way.
Yeah.
We don't
Right?
need for DC to do it because Jefferson City is doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And nobody seems to really understand that, you know, and it's not just this topic, there's other issues also. But it's not going to matter what Joe Biden does if our state legislators are doing it at a state level. And that's actually worse than if they're doing it in DC. So other things that are happening is that this commission can take private donations and gifts, which by the way is happening across all different types of legislation also. They are pouring private monies into all types of situations that they shouldn't be pouring into. The commission can levy assessments against Missouri, and the commission has immunity. So although they can levy assessments against us, we can't levy assessments against them.
With the donations, like I just want to focus there to understand what they're doing with these donations everywhere. These private donations, if you think back to St. Charles County, anybody that looked at that with those election machines, what happened is they had Zuckerberg bucks that bought those machines okay, in St. Charles County. And they found that this is a great tool to use everywhere. If they can use private donations everywhere, they can get the result that they want for anything. So with these compacts, if they grease enough palms the right way, the people, they will get the results that they want.
And I think we've already been through this list. Yeah. Here's another one. This one, so I can only put 12 subjects on a slide because I ran out of room. But this one bill started out as a $6 fee. It was about 1 paragraph long. It was Justin Brown's bill. It was a highway patrol fee, $6 for some. In the end, it ended up being 43 subjects, I think right around 200 pages, because they opened the title up. The title originated as highway patrol fee. They opened the title up to just say anything that has to do with public safety. And they crammed 43 different things into this very unconstitutional bill. And they passed it. Most of them didn't read any of it. Within this bill is a section of statute that has to do with the sheriff's retirement fund. Now, we love law enforcement, and so we're not here to say sheriffs don't deserve to have a nice retirement. But it was in the past set up that the legislature could not appropriate state funds for the sheriff's retirement. Now, not only have they appropriated state budget for sheriff's retirement, I would assume this group of people would understand why that's important, that you don't want the state funding your sheriffs, right? Not only can now the state fund your sheriffs, but they also are accepting private donations.
So your last line of defense, your sheriff, which we all understand is our last line of defense, can now accept gift and donations from private entities. Again, the absolute flip of what we had. We had in law before that they were prohibited from even accepting monies from the General Assembly. Now they opened up that they can accept any money from the General Assembly plus any private donations.
Now that piece of legislation, that statute, was actually carried by Senator Mike Bernskoetter in SB 20, Senator Rusty Black in SB 75, and then it got tucked into this one as well. Justin Brown's is 186. All three of those bills passed. They passed it in 3 different bills. So it's you can tell as you start dissecting things, you can tell what their agenda was, the things that they wanted through, because they'll put it in multiple places to try to make sure that something gets through, that it gets through on something. So we don't like to come and talk. Of course, you guys know what you can do. I feel like, groups like this, we're like preaching to the choir. Right? You guys are already doing the things. Definitely, Lisa and I are so driven by the Holy Spirit. We know beyond a shadow of a doubt, if we win these battles, it won't be a political win. It will only be by the grace of God, led by the Holy Spirit. That's how we win. Amen. I believe that if he asks us to march around that Capitol 7 times or 20 times or whatever, we go march, I think we will see walls fall. I serve the God of miracles. If he wanted to part the Missouri River and make a path from one side to the other, and we lined up marching through there, I believe the Missouri River would part and we would march through on dry ground and leave every Rhino Democrat floating in the river, if that's what he so desired. I believe that with all of my heart. And so I need for you to stay in the fight. I know that you're in the fight already, but I need for you to stay there. I need for you to stay prayed up. I need for you to remember that this is a spiritual battle before it's anything else. That you need to pray against the schemes of the enemy, and if that means praying these people right out of office, then we pray them out of office. And we fight like the Dickens to get the ones in that will stand on Scripture, stand on righteousness. That's how we win. So please stay connected. You can follow us. Lisa's kind of all over the place as far as how you follow Lisa. I have a phone line, but you can follow me on Facebook. There's a Facebook group. There's a podcast now. It's called Arise and Build. It's on all of the major podcast platforms. There is a blog at joidgrace.com, so you can keep up there. The things that we do, I try to write about and talk about on the podcast.
And also you need to talk about too, on your Joid Grace, that we have all these bills. Like, if you want to know all the bills, so you can find those good ones that we haven't told you about, there aren't any. That's a surprise. Okay, there's only those 3 I told you about. But if you want to see the rest to hold them accountable of what they did, you can find it on Joid.
Be sure you
there's
follow.
many more bad subjects. They're only bad.
I'm in the process. She reads all the stuff first. God's just given her this amazing gift and an ability to read it and understand it. So she reads it first. Then we sit down and we talk about it together, and I search through and highlight things and pull out different things, and then I sort of repurpose that information and try to boil it down to something that's manageable for people to read and understand. So that's what I'm in the process of doing. It's a lot. I'm about half done now with the legislation that they passed. And I'm up to about 100 pages. So it's a book, but I don't feel like it's fair to just put out a chart of votes, and then you don't really understand what those votes represent. So it'll be a big resource. It won't be something that you'll read front to back, I don't think. But it'll be there for you if you want to know when it comes time to vote, when it comes election time. It'll be there as a resource for you. So definitely follow the blog because when it's finished, it'll all be compiled and be in some sort of a digital format that'll be free for you to have to access. So that's what we're about to do.
Yeah, and I would say, to back up, 2 things that you take away for future representatives and future senators. What you want if you had to do one thing with each one of them. The House rep, if they're not willing to change the rules, you don't need them. Okay? That's your House rep. Anybody that's running for a House rep and they're not saying that they won't change the rules to get their authority back, you don't need them.
It's not easy to do, right? I mean, they're going to have to stand. They're going to have to be, they need to have a mindset that they could be one of 163. And so what if they are? But they have to be strong enough to stand, either on their own or maybe with 5 or 6 other people. And they'll suffer repercussions for that. They're going to suffer. So they have to be willing to lay their own agenda aside and to do what's best for the people.
So that's on the House. And then your senators, which, I mean, I can already say Jacob is already committed. But any senator that runs, if they are not willing to stand and read a bill on the floor before they're told to vote on it, then you don't need them. They have a tool, and they should be using it to read the bill out loud on the floor. It's not enough even just to vote no. They should be using the tool in their toolbox as a senator to say, you've just put 286 pages here, we had all session, and now you've just shoved this here. 286 pages, and now I'm gonna read it. Because really, constitutionally, we were required to read it 3 times. And we haven't read it once, not even in the quiet of our office. So if they're not willing to read that on the floor, then you don't need them as a senator.
I will say we are going to do our best. We have our first prayer and worship session scheduled at the Capitol the first day of session. So it's important to Lisa and I that we keep first things first, that we keep our eyes and our heart directed toward the Lord. So we reserved the rotunda. We've got a worship team coming. and we're going to pray and we're going to worship on the first day of session and give you an opportunity to come. If you haven't been there before, we'll help you. I'll tell you where to park. I'll tell you how to get your coffee and get all the things before you get in the building. I'll meet you on the front steps if I have to and walk through security with you. But we're going to pray and we're going to worship and we're going to dedicate that building back to the Lord before this thing ever gets started this year. So we'd love to have you come. We're going to plan on doing worship every month. That'll somewhat, I have to work with the State Department to get the rotunda, but we want to welcome you into the Capitol, to Jefferson City. We want to help facilitate the building of relationships between you and your legislators. As session rolls on, we'll probably be active in policy and be giving more information about what they're doing. But we just want to dedicate this back to the Lord, because that truly is, He's going to be the one to give us the strategy to use to make headway. So we want to invite you to be with us. And again, you can follow all that online. So
could you put your blog up on the screen? By chance, or a link to that?
Sure.
And, Kim, do you want to say a little bit? I'm calling you out because you mentioned earlier about possibly taking a carpool or a bus or anything like that during session.
Sure.
The first day of session is the 2nd or 3rd.
The 3rd. It's a Wednesday.
Wednesday. I can't go to this one, but Jody has indicated that every month that she would like to, that they would like to create a worship service in the Rotunda. And so when I find out when the next one is, it's not on the 4th Wednesday of the month, I want to rent a van or a bus with a driver and go, it could be the driver, he has his license, and take a group up there to participate in that day, and everyone also have an opportunity for a tour and to meet with their representatives and senator that day, and to see what happens on the floor as well. So
this is just, thoughts. This is what we do, you guys. We all think together and kind of bat around ideas, and thank you, Kim, for coming up with that, and we'll just continue to grow with that.
I have a question, getting back to the House and how the Speaker controls everything. Was there one individual that started that, or has it just been nipping?
No, it's been incremental.
Yeah.
And guess what? It's not just us. So when I started researching this, and by the way, when I started researching it, the latest version I could find because of fires was actually the early 1900s that J. Ashcroft had. And just to give a God brag here, God just kept telling me it's not true. You can find older. You can find older. And I'm like, okay. So I went to Mizzou's library and I found this 1868 version. And it's been incremental, but it's not just us. So I started looking at the other states as well and their rules, and they all looked very similar. Like back in 1868, and they've all taken these incremental turns, just these small little increments, just to this place. And it's progressive, right? So it's been progressive in nature. But now we need to strip it all the way back because we've lost our history. When I tell House reps this, they don't even really have a place to put it.
They have no frame
They
of
have
reference for
nothing.
it. They don't even realize, our reps coming in, they don't even realize it can be a different way. Because all they get told is, hey, we just have to vote on the rules. This is just part of what we do. It's part of what we do. We're just going to vote on it. It's all fine. It's what we did last year. It's just like the way that it is. So, no big deal. Everybody votes yes. They don't even understand that they actually could change the rules.
Or like the committees. This is another thing that I get asked a lot by the House reps. They'll say, well, who would pick the committees? Well, if you look before, they had a way of determining. And I believe, based upon reading these other states, it was more like a court system. So the committees, you would have the most educated in subjects that would sit there, and when a subject came up, first of all, I know this to be a fact because they said it in other states, they looked to see, number one in those committees, is this constitutional? Go figure, okay? And then they'd say, do we already have a law that addresses this? And if not, then maybe we need to look at it. But then they were more like your court system and saying like a majority or dissenting opinion, right? Like if we're on the same committee and we're experts in the subject, if you're going to vote on it as the legislative body, and I come before you and I say, well, this is what I believe about the subject and why we need this certain law. But then Jody is a dissenting opinion and says, well, this is what I believe and why we may not want to operate this way in the subject. And so you're working out of a place where people are coming with experts in the subject so that you can decide for yourself before you take that vote.
But everything got voted on. Every bill got brought to the floor. The committee didn't kill the bill.
Yeah, this
which
is a
what
place to
happens
die.
now.
Yeah, this is where bills come to either advance their agenda or they die. And the people's agenda, they die in those committees. Let me tell you, that's what dies in those committees. So it was never really meant to be like that.
One of the bills that died in committee this year, in fact, I was thankful that Bill Hardwick was chair of the committee. He at least had the gumption enough to actually bring it up to a vote. The chairs don't even have to bring the bills up to vote in the committee. If they just don't want it to pass, they just don't bring it up at all. But Holly Jones, new representative from somewhere in the St. Louis area, brought a bill up that would require labeling of anything that would have mRNA in it, whether it was a vaccine, a medicine, a beauty product, a food, anything. And it didn't say it was against the law. It didn't say you couldn't include mRNA, but it just required the label. That was a no-go. We couldn't get it even out of the committee because of the Agriculture Lobby Corps. And I was thankful that at least we did have Bill bring it up. So now you can actually hold those committee members responsible for the vote they took. But there was no way that bill was getting through that committee, and it just died right there. So if the rules had been different, that bill would have made it out to the floor for a House vote, and the committee maybe would have said, okay, here's this opinion and here's this opinion, but you still get to vote on it.
I have another question about the Senate. Are there very many senators that filibuster?
They get told not to.
Well, we have some, usually the game that's played looks like this in the Senate. It starts out, everybody's playing nice and we're all on the same team, okay? This is the verbiage to the conservative senators. Like, we're all gonna play on the same team this year, we're gonna bring up your bill, so let's just all play nice, okay? And then the further this goes along, then the conservatives get a little anxious, like maybe I should be filibustering some of this. No, this is just a good interstate medical compact. You don't want to filibuster this. This is a good bill. This is going to help the military.
And we shouldn't filibuster, because if we filibuster now, it's too early in the session to do that. We don't want to rock the boat now. It's too early. We got to hold the filibuster till the end.
But then they realize, normally, okay, at the end, again, it's like the same pattern over and over again. By the end, the good conservative senators are like, I don't think Cindy's going to bring up my bill. I don't think she is. Like, we've kind of passed some of these bills that I don't even know what's in it. But she said it wasn't that bad, but I'm not even sure what's in it. But I don't think she's going to bring up my tax cut. I don't think she's going to bring it up. And finally they go to her and she goes, yeah, we're not bringing up your tax cut. We're not. And then they go, oh, okay, now we're going to filibuster. But then, like, how dumb are we? I'm sorry. Like, at a certain point, if I can tell you this and say I'm going to be here the same time next year, somebody's got to be smart enough to say the gig's up. Like, day one, you're not getting anything, and I don't care if it's day one or day 54 or 104. You're not getting anything that's not good for the people of Missouri, and I'm going to stand and I'm going to read it, because just standing and reading the bills, things won't pass. They're huge omnibus bills that are Democrat bills.
So when you see that chart, and I was going to try to bring it back up for you, but you can remember the chart, right? They're all voting the same on all these bills. I mean, what are the chances, do you think, that there's anything decent inside those? It's just not very much. I'm not saying that every piece of statute they passed was just horrible, but for the most part, it is bad. There's a whole lot of data collection in there. There's a whole lot of private gifts and donations being thrown around all over the place. What else did we see happening?
The waterways, your waterways, they're now getting private donations for your waterways. So we've fought the waterways. I don't know how many here fought the waterways, but we fought the waterways so that you wouldn't have that federal intrusion.
Right.
Well, now they've opened it up to private donations. And so whoever funds these people on these ports and everything else, they're gonna do they're gonna go where the money goes.
So, truly, truly, with all of my heart, and after you read what we publish, you can make your own determination. But it's my opinion that the best thing that your legislators could do is stop everything. Everything. If they didn't pass another bill for the next 10 years, you'd be better off for it. So we have to have people who are willing, who don't get caught up in this game thinking, oh, we need to lower the taxes, but I'm going to have to play the game so they'll lower the taxes. They're not going to lower your taxes, people.
The gas tax.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you got to have legislators who are willing to say, I don't care about my bill, because when you don't care about your own bill, they just lost their leverage. Now, if I don't care about my bill and getting my name on the thing, on the wall, my picture in the paper so I can win the next election or whatever, if that's gone, they have no leverage.
Well, unless it's some other place.
Well, I mean, unless they're going to pay you off some other way. And they do. It's not that they don't. But then I've lost the majority of my leverage. And I can say, you know what? I don't really care if my bill comes out of committee or not. I'm still going to filibuster.
Right.
And if you see the conservatives standing to filibuster, you need to be cheering them on. I don't care. They could start filibustering the first day of session and shut the whole thing down. If we could get them to filibuster for 4 months, I mean, I'd buy their dinner, I'd buy their Depends, I would stand in the gallery cheering them on if they would just shut the whole thing down. You'd be better off.
Amen.
I love what you guys are doing.
Well, thank you.
So how do
Pray
we
for
make
us.
sure that you continue? It doesn't sound like you're getting paid. How do you do this?
Well, you can make that tax-deductible donation, and Lisa and I will make sure that it gets put to good use. You know, there's always ways to support. So if you want to support financially, just come talk to us. We'll figure that out. But you can, I mean, mostly pray and share with your circle of people, because what we need is for you guys to show up there with us. It really does make a difference when you show up in person. They're not used to that, and they don't like it. They just don't like it. So even though it's hard for us to say, I mean, we can't plan a day, you know, we can't tell you a specific day to come because things just happen and we have no control. But we can tell you this, the last 2 weeks, which is the first 2 weeks of May, that's a good time for you to look at your calendar and see if there's a few days that you can be there. Follow along. If there's other days you can be there, that would be great. But we need more people. And I know you know that locally here too, right? Like, you guys are great. This is an awesome, by the way, kudos to all of you. And thank Jan. No, this is a big deal what's happening here, because this isn't happening in every county all over the state of Missouri. You guys are doing a phenomenal job. The fact that you have somebody going to all these different boards and all these different meetings, coming to report back, this isn't happening. So kudos to all of you. I don't see this. I travel a lot now, and I'm talking to a lot of different people. This isn't happening in other places across Missouri.
What?
It's not. So we need to just be praying that more people come. More people come here, and that this spreads across the state.